Hello and welcome to the digital premiere of Sanctuary today with ACO. I am delighted to be joined by Marin Alsop and Derek Bermel as they will have a conversation with many of the composers who are featured on the program. We will be premiering this on Friday at Carnegie Hall, which is featuring the American Composers Orchestra and violin soloist Jennifer Koh and led by conductor Marin Alsop. So Derek Bermel is a twice Grammy-nominated composer and clarinetist who has been recognized as a dynamic and unconventional curator of concert series. And Marin Alsop currently serves as the chief conductor of the Orff Vienna Radio Symphony Orchestra. She's also the first music director of the University of Maryland's National Orchestral Institute and Festival, and the first chief conductor and curator of Chicago's Ravinia Festival, where she curates and conducts the Chicago Symphony Orchestra summer residencies. Later in this event, we will be joined by composers Hannah Kendall, Paula Matthusen, Lisa Bielawa, as well as violinist Jennifer Koh. Just as a very short introduction to them all, Hannah Kendall is known for her attentive arrangements and immersive world building, and she bridges the gaps between different musical cultures, both honoring and questioning the contemporary tradition while telling new stories through it. Paula Matthusen is a composer who writes electroacoustic and acoustic music and realizes sound installations. Her work often considers discrepancies in musical space, real, imagined, and remembered. Lisa Bielawa is a composer, producer, and a vocalist, and a Rome Prize winner. She frequently takes inspiration from literary sources and close artistic collaborations. Jennifer Koh is a violinist recognized for her intense, commanding performances delivered with dazzling virtuosity and technical assurance. A forward-thinking artist, she is dedicated to exploring a broad and eclectic repertoire while promoting equity and inclusivity in classical music. A few tech reminders before we jump in. Please use the chat to interact with fellow attendees and to ask questions, as we will have time to answer questions. This panel will be recorded and available on ACO's YouTube channel in the near future. A quick thank you to our donors for making Sanctuary possible: Elizabeth and Eustace Schlichting, the New York State Council on the Arts, and the ACO 2020 and 2021 Commission Club. So without further ado, here are Derek Bermel and Marin Alsop. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Aidan. Hi, Marin.
Hi, good to see you.
Oh, you must be, now your head is full of music. Well, it's always full of music and full of scores, new scores, which you're about to start rehearsing tomorrow for this concert that we're doing on Friday at Carnegie Hall, at Zankel Hall, with the ACO. And I think Aid mentioned that concert, the title is Sanctuary, named after both the piece by Lisa Bielawa that's been composed for Jennifer Koh, our soloist, but also, you know, that place where everybody goes. What is your sanctuary? Where do you find solace, and whether in music or outside?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about the word, you know, in relation to the program, and I think we talked about it too, Derek, when we were putting the program together, that the word sanctuary can mean so many different things to so many different people. And I especially like the idea of sanctuary being something that can protect us, but also envelop us and keep others out when we want to. So I think, you know, for me, like for many people, probably my family is my sanctuary, you know, where you can be who you really are, and they can tease you and it doesn't hurt so much, you know. That's the sanctuary. But I would bet that for many people, or many of us, the sanctuary is music, you know, music itself as an abstract refuge. And I think for many people, music is a form of sanctuary. But I've been fascinated by the word. It's not a word I think I've used very often in life. Is it a word that comes up often for you, Derek?
You know, I'm working right now with just coincidentally working with a writer, Sandra Cisneros, and she always says to me, when I'm getting so busy and crazy because we're working on a libretto, she's been writing this libretto, and she says to me, she says, just tell them you're in sanctuary. And she always uses that word, and that's what she says when she's working, for her.
See, that's
her work.
for her, that's gone fishing, and I think maybe everyone needs that phrase. It's true. I mean, especially in these days when it's so hard to escape all of the input and the media, social media, and the emails and texts and everything else. Maybe sanctuary is that moment of quietude, where you're just not trying to multitask your way out of a paper bag,
Yeah, here we are in a Zoom webinar talking about sanctuary from our personal spaces. But yeah, it's I feel like the pandemic really highlighted that need for sanctuary, and
but I think it also changed people's perception of what concept of what sanctuary is and could be for them. And I think that's why we see so many changes in our societal makeup, that people are gravitating toward other jobs. They want to feel that their investment is meaningful to them, and people have reprioritized things and they've moved locations. I mean, I know a lot of people who have been deeply affected, and the idea of sanctuary has really, I think it's evolved and grown a lot during this time.
Has it changed? I mean, because of course you've worked with so many different orchestras really in depth for periods of time and changed their way of making music. And has the pandemic changed the way you do programming? I mean, now you're at the Vienna Radio Symphony, you've got Cabrillo, which is a festival, and then you've got a kind of educational performance position at NOI, at the National Orchestral Institute, where you're really designing your own program. In each of these places, you probably have to deal with programming and new music, which has been, kind of one of your real hallmarks in a different way.
I just need to correct one thing, which is that I finished in Cabrillo in 2016. So Christy Machalaru is currently the music director there.
Oh,
although
I meant to say in Chicago
Chicago, Ravinia. Okay.
In Ravinia,
just to say that's good.
Sorry.
But I think talking about new music, Cabrillo always comes to mind because that's a focus on new music, no matter what. I think, more than the pandemic, I think the things that have changed the programming landscape are related to the social movements, the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter movement. And I don't think the industry would have come to this place on its own. And I think that that's a critical component. And, of course, it's related to the COVID as well. That all these things happen at a certain moment for a certain reason. I don't really understand all the factors that go into it, but I think mainly due to the social movements, which were so strong and so important and so overdue, in my opinion, in many ways, it opened up the music industry to at least being thoughtful about this. I was always promoting new music. Come on, Beethoven was new music once, guys. Come on, let's, and it always felt like I would say, look, I know you don't like, what would it be when I was a kid? I didn't like Brussels sprouts. I love them now, but I know it feels like eating your Brussels sprouts, but that's how I would feel, instead of the excitement about, and now I feel there's an openness. And also during the pandemic, the fact that we had to look at our repertoire in terms of alternative size ensemble. So I think we were able to do a lot more new things you know, you would think, oh, well, let's just do little Mozart, but it ended up actually opening up people's minds, I think. So I was able to program a lot of new music, and it was welcomed. I think that's the difference. And now that we're back in, you know, sort of almost back to normal, the great thing is that the programming has not gone back to normal. I feel that this idea of inclusivity, accessibility, variety, and are now much more a part of the landscape of creative programming.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that went into this program very much. This a desire to move forward and not backward into the future, and it feels like we're still kind of emerging. We're not out of this pandemic yet, so we're kind of learning to live with it, and maybe that's, maybe that says something about how, that it's nothing's going to magically go away. We have to work to try to make it go away. It's going to be a struggle like everything else.
Yeah, but I'm really I'm encouraged and hopeful that that our future will be a more diverse and more inclusive one now. I just want to say, if it's okay, take a second to say that the ACO was really a formative institution for me as I was coming of age, sort of as a New York freelancer, and playing with Dennis, and also with oh gosh, now his name is escaping me, but it'll come back to me in a second. Yeah, I actually didn't play when Paul was conducting, but often, oh gosh, well, it'll come back to me. But we had so many wonderful conductors and great programs and incredible composers. And it really, I was so into the new music scene as a violinist. And the fact that this could be an orchestra promoting composers and experimenting and allowing them to take risks in a venue like Carnegie Hall was really formative, I think, for me to be part of. So it's nice to be back.
Yeah. Well,
and I was thinking of Gunther Schuller. That's who it was.
Oh, Gunther Schuller. Yes.
Yeah. He conducted often when I played, and I, was blown away by his ear and, his grasp of new music. And yeah, it was a real eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah, and inclusivity too, because speaking about somebody who thought widely about who could be involved in classical music and contemporary music, was somebody, Gunther Schuller. And for me, the ACO obviously was really important for me coming up, gave me opportunities that I wouldn't have had. And we try to be a catalyst toward the future and to think about, how we can even help orchestras develop their relationships with composers. That's kind of one of the things that we were about. I guess with that in mind, it'd be nice to introduce Jennifer Koh, because she's kind of a co-conspirator.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah, right. A co-conspirator. Exactly. And she's somebody who's really helped redefine, I think audiences' engagement with composers in.
Oh, definitely.
Having commissioned so many people and performed so many new works. So Jennifer, I don't know if you're. Oh yes, you're here. Hello.
Hi.
I'm not sure if Jennifer is spotlighted here with us. I can't tell. There she is. You're spotlighted.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you just talk to us just a little bit, even just in general, about you're doing so much commissioning, playing new work, and working with composers, in the most, kind of integral and formative ways on how they develop works and how to get the works out there. And do you want to talk a little bit about your foundation and also your work with composers?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd love to thank ACO for doing this commission. And I'm so looking forward to doing the New York premiere of Lisa's Concerto with Marin. You kind of talked about in terms of commissioning and working with composers. And I feel really lucky. I first worked with you, Marin, I think when I was still a teenager. And I think we learned so much from our experiences with other people and other musicians that we respect. Like Marin was mentioning about Gunther Schuller. And yeah, so I think for me, I've learned such a great deal also from working with composers. And I've been really lucky with having great mentors as well, musical mentors and people who have inspired me on kind of a human level. So for me, it just feels like a natural extension of being a musician. It doesn't feel any different. It feels like it would be strange to stop learning new repertoire. I mean, that's what we did, or that's what I did as a younger violinist. And it seems weird if I just stopped learning anything new at like age 18 or 19. So this just feels totally normal to me. And I think when we think about the future of music, I often try to keep in mind that first of all, we need to create an environment, which is something I think ACO has done, something that I know that Marin has championed in terms of creating an environment where composers can be heard and advocated for. And I think it's about investing in the future and what is the future that we see and what are the steps that we take to realize that future. So in essence, yes, and I'm very grateful to the nonprofit I started, ARCO Collaborative. We were able to pass the project Alone Together, where we were able to help 20 younger freelance artists within 2 weeks of the shelter-in-place order. So I'm very grateful to the members of my board that they would have, it was a chaotic time. Everybody was like really unsettled, and it was pretty horrific in New York City. But I appreciate that they cared about artists.
And you two have worked together on new work, on old work?
Both. Yeah, occasionally we do one of those old pieces, but I think we tend to both like doing something new and exciting. We've done a lot of commissions together, haven't we, Jenny? I think.
And yeah, we've also done old music.
Yeah, what old music? I'm trying to remember. Did we do Sibelius or Prokofiev? I can't remember.
Really
Sibelius, yeah, that was great.
First,
did you both perform Anna Klein's music together?
Yeah,
we did.
Concerto. Yeah,
we did.
Oh, that's exciting because her music is on this program as well.
Yeah, that's really fun.
In fact, why don't we share an excerpt from Restless Oceans, because we have a short minute-long excerpt, and you could talk about that or something else. But sure. Why don't we share this short excerpt from Anna Klein's Restless Oceans, which is going to open our concert on Friday at Zankel Hall with Maestra Marin Alsop. And you commissioned that piece, right?
I did, yes. This was I asked Anna if she would write a short piece for a project I was doing for the World Economic Forum at Davos. And the focus was on women and gender equality, and a lot of discussions about that. And so I brought an orchestra of students from London, and I decided to bring all women for the orchestra. And so we played this piece, which is, it's based on this gorgeous poem, but it really is, in a nutshell, about empowering women and giving them a voice. And so there's a lot of stomping, there's some singing in it, there's some grunting, and it's a really fun piece. And we actually had to reprise it and play it twice at the World Economic Forum. So that, I thought that was a good sign.
Wow, that must have been an interesting audience to play for.
Yeah, very, very, always an interesting audience there. Yeah.
I mean, Jenny, if you're still there, I was going to say, you've both played and performed all over the world, and have you sensed, I mean, at this time, how are things coming back, and how are people approaching, the idea of playing more contemporary work? I know here in New York, I'm seeing, lots at the Philharmonic, for example. There's a lot of new work happening, and I'm just kind of curious what both of your experience been. You're so busy in so many different places.
Yeah, first of all, when Marin was talking, I remembered, Marin, this whole project, New American Concerto Project, I called you about that. I was like, oh, I have this idea. And Marin helped me with the title.
Cool. I don't remember that part, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah. But you had a question, Derek, which now I totally forgot. I'm sorry.
I was just riffing here, but I was saying, that just that you've been both working all over the world in many different.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like, coming out of the pandemic, it of course stopped everything. But I think one of the things artists are good at is, in order to begin a piece, you have to imagine the ending, right? So I think for most of us, we had to realize that we knew even from the beginning that there would be an end to the pandemic. And I think because of that, we saw a lot of artists doing really creative and interesting things. And I hope this means that artists will be given more agency in terms of curation, in terms of programming, in terms of commissions, because I think we're able to dream that next step of what we want in that future. And I think in the pandemic, it was shown that we were able to implement it also. So I hope there will be a lot more trust given to artists, and to also express, I think it was, of course, there were a lot of systemic inequities that I think were exposed during the pandemic. But I think there were also a lot of similarities of experience. And I think especially because of that, these kind of shared experiences, we probably went through different emotions at different times. I think there's something crucial about remembering that. And I think that's what music can do, is communicate that communal experience that we all had. And hopefully people will be, realize the importance of that going forward.
Yeah, I think the music business, in a way, was able to recalibrate a little bit, so that I think what Jenny's saying about, maybe if I'm paraphrasing wrongly, do correct me, but that creativity maybe started leading instead of things like funding. I mean, we need funding, but I think our balance had gotten off somehow. I think risk-taking, innovation, sharing creative ideas, that this has to be our primary motivation. And the funding, I always believe that funding will support creativity in humanity, because that's really what we're hotwired for, And so I feel that things have been a little bit recalibrated on the healthier side, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, well, let's hope that funding follows ideas, you know, rather than the other way around. But I think you're both leading so strongly in that area. And I want to bring on Lisa Bielawa also to speak about this piece that we've all been talking about, Sanctuary, her concerto, which has become so relevant in this moment, even more relevant perhaps than it was before. But hi, Lisa, one of my dearest,
Hi, Derek.
oldest friends. Not oldest,
Yes.
but you know what I mean when I say old.
Yes, we've known each
but-
other a long, long time. We were in college together, as it turns out. Yeah.
Remember that good old days.
Yeah.
So, or the bad old days, who knows? But in any case, can you talk about this, both how you worked? I mean, you and Jennifer Koh have worked together for a long time, and maybe we'll play a short excerpt of something that you did together, but the Sanctuary Songs, which maybe was a testing ground for this. But do you want to say anything about that, or about the working relationship that you've had for so many years?
Sure. I mean, I also want to thank ACO. My story with ACO goes way back, and I really had. It was in 2003, I think, when I was doing what was then called the Whitaker reading sessions. Way back when, and I guess it was 2004. I had a piece with ACO the first season of Zankel. So I remember I had to see the hall, and I had to wear a hard hat to walk around and check out.
Oh, I remember
hall.
that piece. That was Rome. Yeah, that piece.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yes, and Marin's, this is the first time I've actually ever met Marin right now, on this Zoom. So this is a brand new relationship, which is really exciting to me. But yeah, Jenny and I have known each other, I guess it's been almost 10 years now, because we toured together in Einstein on the Beach. And this is the newest of several collaborations. Jenny has a very entrepreneurial, one of the things I think she and I have always sort of been, we've always sort of resonated with each other, because we tend both to have a kind of an entrepreneurial view of project making, so she has, a lot of her pieces, that she like this piece that she's playing is part of something even larger, a sort of a vision that has a longer arc. And I also tend to have, when I receive commissions that are for pieces that are smaller scale, like the Sanctuary Songs is just for Jennifer and me together. I did see it as part of a sort of a larger fascination. First of all, with the word sanctuary. At the time, this was 2017. We were seeing a lot about sanctuary cities. There was a travel ban. There were all these protests we were going to. Jenny and I went to some of those together. And so this was very much in my mind. I became fascinated, Marin, like you were saying, I sort of became fascinated with this word. At that time, it seemed to be in more common parlance suddenly. So I went and did this residency, a fellowship at the American Antiquarian Society, where I just dove in and researched the use of this word in American writings and speeches and tracts, and and I really sort of dove into that. So the Sanctuary Songs that I wrote for Jenny and me to perform together were a study. You're right, Derek. They were actually a sort of a study for something that we already knew would become a concerto. But I was, as I often do, I was working through some ideas on a smaller scale that could then kind of provide a language for this bigger vision, that Jenny and I each had for something on a deeper connection with this word.
I mean, maybe we should listen to a little bit of that and then come back
Sure.
and have Jenny talk about it. And also I'd love to hear Marin talk about, how it's been to work on and study this piece, so let's hear an excerpt from the Sanctuary Songs.
This sanctuary made for me, this broken wall and roof and stone, and where we stood with oath to oath, I stand alone.
just getting going there. Okay. I love hearing that, like with composer and performer kind of, you know, doing this thing together. It's so moving.
Yeah. It's an unusual, it was a really unusual request, you know, a commission to write something for me to perform with a virtuoso soloist whom I was also preparing to write a concerto for. You know, it was a very specific and focused way to process this idea of sanctuary that we also had been kind of processing together in the tumultuous sort of social justice, you know, kind of reality shift that Marin, that you were talking about. It was already, of course, these plates were already shifting then, and the piece only makes me realize now, because of course it was finished, you know, more than 2 years ago. And its performance was postponed. It's, you know, its New York premiere was postponed a couple of years, but the piece itself and the themes that I was meditating on only seem to have become more sort of salient and possibly have more sort of prismatic sort of meanings for each of us because of the experiences we went through in the pandemic, because of the upheavals in the social, you know, in the political realms. So it's really interesting.
And Jenny, you've worked with many, I mean, you saw the list of composers right there, incredible people, all with very different voices. And you've been working with so many of them, just as Marin has worked with so many composers. How's that been? Did you do similar kind of collaborations with each of these folks?
Yeah, I think I remembered having this conversation with Marin actually, and it was about imagining what is America now? How do we reveal that through music? Women are 51% of the population. If we look back at even if we look present day, it's not even historically, you know, and asking whether their stories have been heard. I always find it more interesting. This is obviously not really a conversation because I'm talking and I'm not asking everybody else stuff. But usually I find it way more interesting to hear other people's perspectives because you know, I already know how I think about things. So yeah, I think working with composers, I think this question of what is America today, and what's our responsibility towards the art form in terms of making our music even relevant to the future. I mean, if we think about it, people of color are the global majority in the world, right? And so if we in classical music don't start to include their voices, we have to be careful not to become irrelevant in that way, right? So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, for sure. I think also maybe people would like to hear a bit about working with, how is it for you, Lisa, to work with a soloist over a period of time, you know, and get to know the soloist, and then you start writing. I mean, when we look back in the history of art, you know, art is usually made for people, specific people. Great artists, you know, they paint something for someone they admire, they love, or they want to give to. And I think so many of the great concerti, I mean, think about Mozart horn concertos, you know, they were written for friends. And I think that adds a very tangible and personal element to it. But I was wondering if you guys could talk about that, you know, how that feels.
Sure. I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm first and foremost, when I'm writing something certainly for a virtuoso soloist, but really anytime, you know, I'm never just writing for an instrument, you know, I'm always writing for a person. And not only did Sanctuary arise out of experiences that Jenny and I had together and discussions we were having, you know, things that we were processing right together in our conversations. But there's also a puppy-like thing I do, which is I go all over the place and I listen to it. You know, if I'm writing for a performer, I show up everywhere and I listen to them do, you know. And so there is a way, and you know, we're going to get into this now too. This week, it's going to be such a pleasure because there's a way in which the actual technical writing, you know, the virtuoso writing, is of a sort that is designed to celebrate and explore Jenny's particular kind of way of being a soloist, which is particular to her, has to do with the way she encounters a composer through their score on stage, how we witness that, what the relationship is between the score and also the audience. The way in which soloists interact with audience is very personal, very different. There are so many different ways that soloists embody the pieces. So I think it was a very it's great that this was not the first piece. I mean, there were a series of shorter things that I was able to write for Jenny and with her, and I was able to hear her play so many other things too, in the various contexts that we made music in. So this represents a more mature, you know, kind of collaborative view of a soloist and her particular gifts for me. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Jenny, or if, you know, people can also put questions in the chat. This is we're talking, of course, about our concert on Friday at Zankel Hall Sanctuary, featuring this new concerto by Lisa Bielawa, featuring soloist Jennifer Koh, who's with us, and the conductor, Maestro Marin Alsop. And I don't know if there are questions, but please feel free to put them in the chat. And we're gonna, unless there's something else burning, we're gonna bring on our next composer, who is Hannah Kendall, and to talk a little bit about her work. And so thank you so much to Lisa and Jenny for sharing your thoughts with us, and can't wait to hear it on Friday. And hi, Hannah, nice to see you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, I'm fine.
Good. Well, yes, we've already done that, but I don't know. I felt the urge to ask you again.
Well, you're British, so you had to be polite. You know, my dad was British, so so it's wonderful to see you. And I'd love just to hear the two of you talk about the work. You know, and I'll be like the bass player from Spinal Tap. I'll try to be like lukewarm water and fade back here.
Oh, well, it's lovely to meet you too, Marin. We haven't done
Good
that
to meet
yet,
you,
so,
Hannah. We
yeah.
haven't met in person. I'm looking forward to it very
Me
much.
too,
Thanks.
yeah.
But of course, I've known your name, and you know, my second home really is the UK, and so yeah, you're a household name there. How's that? But yeah, maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the impetus behind the piece and the inspiration?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, so during 2020, so we were right in the thick of the pandemic still, and the proms, the BBC proms, which is, which I'm sure most people know, is that's an institution in itself, a 2.5 month festival of classical music in the UK, where I've seen you perform many, many, many times, Marin, and you know, that's really how I got to know your work. And being a Londoner, and you know, spending my summers growing up going to the proms, and they asked me to write a piece for the opening of the festival, but in 2020. So there wasn't an audience there, so I was the only person in the Royal Albert Hall, which usually seats 5,000 people, and that's my usual experience of going to the proms. And they wanted a piece that in some way, you know, reflected on the world's events. And so for me, you know, obviously, you know, the pandemic, but also the death of George Floyd. It was sort of my second summer living in the States, so living in New York. So for me, it was a particularly poignant time, not only due to the the circumstances in which he died, but also, being a British person living in the States and being aware of racial tensions and police presence in Black communities in particular, and all of these things, which I have a very British perspective. And just sort of living in New York and protests going past my apartment, honestly, for a solid 2 weeks really affected me. And so I wanted to draw those two aspects particularly into the piece. And just a few weeks before that, I had been to the Guggenheim to see the Basquiat exhibition that was on there. And I was honestly just blown away by his Tuxedo piece in particular, which is, this huge giant work that takes up a whole wall, larger than you or I, and it's sort of classic Basquiat, referencing certain issues and conditions that he was interested in, ranging from environmental issues and dust bowls to police presence in Black communities, to these explorers, so Vasco da Gama, Magellan, all of these European explorers who decided to leave Europe, cross the seas, for trade reasons and all sorts of other reasons. And so really thinking about these issues which come under the umbrella of globalization, which for me, I was felt as though I could consolidate the issues into that notion of globalization, because obviously, the resulting Afro-diaspora of the slave trade and, how COVID just spread so rapidly around the globe. And so this piece, Tuxedo, Vasco da Gama, it means a lot to me because it's the first of currently 10 pieces after Basquiat's work, which will be eventually 16 pieces. And so this was the first one that I wrote 2 years ago. And there's the spiritual, which is in the music box that I transcribed for Music Box. That was part of the piece, and it's kind of drawing in aspects that he himself had notated into his artwork, Tuxedo. So that's a brief introduction.
But what we should say is that you've packed a lot into a 5-minute piece. 6-minute piece.
So I didn't catch the beginning of the question. Sorry.
You've packed a lot into a 6-minute piece.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I think that studying this piece, I really enjoyed all the backstory because it was so. It gave me a sense of, who you are as a person also, and what issues are relevant to you and what you feel are important in today's climate. I mean, that's what art is supposed to do. Is so whether it's, visual art or music, that it's supposed to bring us in touch with the issues of today. And that's what I really feel this piece does. And I really like it a lot. I think it's great. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of your music too. So it's fun, but I think you could take just even one of these themes and probably build it into a whole symphony, let alone, all 10 of them woven together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the plan, because I'm not done with Tuxedo, and I agree. And I think that there's a violin solo in the work, and I know that that's something that I want to build into.
A concerto.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's so interesting because Basquiat, it was, I think, in so many ways misunderstood, and maybe even today still. And yet, I didn't really know a lot about him, but I was watching this drama about Andy Warhol. And I started to really be curious about his work through their association. And, it's just, there's so much there. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think I know the series you're talking about, which I haven't watched yet, but I was just reading.
It's quite fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, that's for obvious reasons on my list, but I was just reading an interview that Basquiat gave back in the 80s, and he even himself said, you know, how misunderstood his work was, and it was expected to be a certain way and expected to touch on certain subjects, and which I find really interesting, because, you know, you say a lot of these themes that I'm interested are packed into the work, but it felt, in all honesty, until you know, the summer of 2020, that I couldn't really speak openly about those subjects or put them into my work.
That's really interesting to hear. I think on a much smaller level, I feel similarly about, you know, speaking about gender representation, and it's so liberating to be able to speak openly about these things. And I think it's our responsibility to continue the discussion so that we keep the doors open. You know, I worry that there are people standing, you can't wait to shut the doors, you know.
Yeah, I think that's my concern too. And in all honesty, that's the purpose of music boxes in my works, which feature a lot now. It's because, you know, if you put a spiritual such as Wade in the Water in a music box, you know, people think, oh, you know, that's really, you know, it's really sweet, what a childlike, you know, little box that is. But actually it's kind of saying, I'm putting this big historical, you know, Afro-diasporic tune into the center of the piece, and it's kind of a disarming technique, which, you know, even in 2020, it kind of felt as though that's the approach I had to take. But now I've kind of, you know, grown it into, you know, it's kind of built on that idea. So yeah.
Great, keep going.
It's an incredible symbolism. I mean, the music box, it's very powerful, I think, in your piece. And I think, you know, it's interesting also, because I was just thinking, I live just maybe not even a mile from Basquiat's grave. So he's buried in Greenwood Cemetery along with Leonard Bernstein, one of your mentors, Marin. And I wonder if we can hear, we just have a tiny clip from BBC of your, of this. So maybe we will be really excited to hear this piece on Friday, and I'll hear it before the rehearsal. But thank you, Hannah, for joining us.
Thank you.
And we're so excited to see you and feature the work. So let's hear this short excerpt. And what would it be without the marketing at the end? There you go. But from the BBC prom. Congratulations, Hannah, and we'll see you on Friday.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
See you then.
We're meeting, there's lots of introductions here.
Yeah, it's great.
Meeting all the composers, some of them for the first time, on some of you've championed before. One of the ones who you also haven't met, I think, is Paula Matthusen. So
yeah, we've met on Zoom. That's it.
Yeah, that's true.
Hi, Paula.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. I'm thrilled to be here, and yeah, thank you for this. Very good.
Yeah, can we play a little bit excerpt from your work before we start to talk about this? We do have an excerpt, and I think this is from Old Fire's Catch All Buildings, or
yeah, performed by Klein. Yeah.
Okay.
it's the amazing Jeffrey Gavitt of Low Bank singing very, very high with backwards Norwegian. So yeah, it's pretty great.
Wow. Well, can you tell us about this upcoming world premiere? I mean, you have all different types of music, so it's even hard to get into to just speak to a composer for a few minutes. But can you tell us a little bit about the upcoming premiere and you know, what went into it and
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, I was so excited. So when I received the phone call, when Derek, when you and I had a conversation about it too, and this idea of sanctuary, I was so thrilled. And knowing the composers involved, I was also just completely delighted. And that word, as people have been talking, like I really love these ideas of sanctuary as being sort of abstract refuge, what that implies in terms of quietude, in terms of temporality as well. And part of that is realizing that there's so many associations with it, and a lot of them that I think of initially involve sort of this idea of kind of a closing off and sort of a wall, but whereas I realize that some of the impetus beyond that is to reach out, like everything you look from nature, right? Like says like reach out, like we actually need to engage with each other differently. And so this piece in some ways has a lot of those ideas of like different, there's a lot of cello solo, for example, and that gets sort of amplified by different members of the ACO and gets picked up. And but also importantly, I wanted to work with this collaboratively because part of working in so many different forms means that I really love to work with different people. And so for this, I reached out to poet Danielle Fogel, who wrote original poetry for this piece that is interspersed between all 5 of the movements and projected. And in large part too, because I'm interested in the complexities and multiple valences of all these meanings and not turning away from them, but embracing them and keeping those doors open, right? And so I won't ever be able to figure anything out like that alone, but I'm really excited to reach out and have the conversation across disciplines in that regard. And so I'm really thrilled that Danielle wrote original poetry after listening to some realizations of sketches of my piece, and it has been this really beautiful back and forth. And I'm just thrilled to hear how it sounds on Thursday and Friday.
I'm looking forward to it. I think this this idea of, you know, I mean, this is an age-old concept, you know, of the inspiration of text or the integration of text into our art form. But I think this will be very effective. It's a very simple idea of just having it integrated into the performance itself as well, which is really cool.
I mean, I like that idea. If the question is simple, the answer is not, right? So
Right, that's all. But you know, it's always the when you can share a simple concept, people can take it away and make it as complex as their inner dwelling is. They take it into their own sanctuary, you know?
right, absolutely.
Marin, how is it to get a new piece? I mean, I just also want to encourage people to ask questions if there's anything.
And I've
I
got
know-
all the scores here. Every time we talk about a different piece, I'm pulling up the score to say what I want to say. Yeah.
What is it like to work on a brand new piece? You
Wait,
have this score.
Paula, your score is on the chair. I have to grab it.
That's nice to know, right? That your score is on her chair. It's kind of cool to think
Oh,
about
yeah.
that.
Definitely. Oh, and I have a few questions, but I'll ask you tomorrow when I see you, or Thursday. Yeah, no, it's, you know, it's super fun. So super interesting. So when I open the first page of Paula's score, you know, the notation is not similar to anything that I'm familiar with. You know, it's because it's written, it starts with a solo cello. And it's really, I think it's allowing someone freedom to interpret. I don't know, Paul, we'll see how it goes, right? So it's very cool. And the words, of course, are the inspirational text is on the start of each of the movements. And, you know, it's good. I was thinking, oh, I'm glad I don't play the harp this week. There's a lot of harp.
That's true.
But it looks beautiful. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, this is really exciting. We have, I guess, two world premieres. One in New York, at least one New York is, and I think that all the other 3 are New York premieres actually. So it's going to be all works that this audience hasn't heard before, unless they flew right from the BBC proms or something. But it's really exciting. Paula, what does the orchestra mean to you? And what did writing for Marin, knowing that you were writing for Marin Alsop, what did that mean to you?
I mean, it's such a gift. I mean, I'm so excited for this. And part of it is that I work so much in electronics, but I grew up in orchestras. And part of that is that my mother's a public school teacher. She continues to play in a community orchestra. And having an orchestra means something that it's, of the caliber of ACO, which is incredible, but then also being there's also something that's incredibly familial to me about it. And it's so wonderful to be able to imagine all these bodies on stage, all these brilliant musicians. It's just, as much as I work with electronics, I love seeing the complete sound and power of acoustic instruments when they're combined. It's completely exciting, and being able to play with that in this context was really fun. So I thereby restricted myself. There's no electronics for me on this outside of the projections. And I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Me too.
Well, thank you both so much. And I was thinking that another composer whose work we're going to be premiering on this concert is Dai Wei, who's not with us right now, but will be on Friday. And maybe we'll sing everybody out with an excerpt from Dai Wei's work. Let me just see which excerpt this is. I think it's from the ACO reading. Let's see. Oh yes, it's a Samsaric dance. So this is the work that she actually was the winner of the Underwood commission, which is now the Earshot commission, which we do every year when we have the readings in June, which will be conducted by George Manahan in June. And so Marin, you decided to commission this new work, something about her work. Oh, bye-bye, Paula. I see she disappeared. But we'll see you on Friday. And Marin, you were really interested in her music when you heard it.
I haven't done anything by her yet. And when we were talking, and you sent me a few clips from different composers, and hers really resonated with me. And so I was really excited that she was up for it. It wasn't a lot of notice, so but she jumped right in to join us. So I'm looking forward to meeting her and working on the new piece.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's great to get, some insight into how you think about working with composers. And, I'm sure you're going to be working with many more, because you've got so many different things lined up in Chicago, at NOI, in Baltimore, and
Vienna's a whole new crowd over there. It's a whole new group of people. It's really fun. It's a different kind of new music scene. So it's always good to expand our horizons. Huh?
It sure is.
Looking forward to Friday a lot. And I'm so glad that it's almost sold out. Sounds great.
Yeah, yes. So get your tickets now, those of you listening, because won't be possible soon. In any case, we'll lead out here. Thank you so much to Aiden, who's going to come on and say a couple words, but we'll lead you out with Samsaric dance, and afterwards, Aiden will wrap up. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Marin.
Thank you.
And that was Daiwei Samsaric Dance. Thank you so much for everyone that joined us today. We're so happy to have you here. We have shared in the link where you can buy tickets for Friday's concert, and also a quick survey if you would, so that we know what kind of digital previews you like to see in the future. So thank you again to our panelists, to all the composers, and Jenny the violin who joined us today, and our funders again, and our ACO staff for making this possible. So we will see you on Friday. Have a good evening.